ahead.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and welcome, Dr. Kerr, and welcome everybody. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at the Helping Parents Heal meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally.
Thank you, Lynn. That was perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and read a short bio for Dr. Christopher Kerr so that you all know a little bit more about him before he starts to speak. Dr. Christopher Kerr is the Chief Medical Officer and Chief Executive Officer at Hospice and Palliative Care Buffalo. Born and raised in Toronto, Canada, Chris earned his MD as well as a PhD in neurobiology. Outside of direct patient care, Chris's focus is in the area of patient advocacy. His passion is palliative care and a belief that such care should be throughout the continuum of illness. Under Dr. Kerr's medical leadership, Hospice Buffalo now serves 1,100 patients a day, half of whom receive services prior to hospice. Dr. Kerr's background in research has evolved from bench science towards the human experience of illness as witnessed from the bedside, specifically patients' dreams and visions at the end of life. Although medically ignored, these near universal experiences often provide comfort and meaning, as well as insight into the life led and the death anticipated. To date, the research team at Hospice Buffalo has published multiple studies on this topic and documented over 1,500 end-of-life events, many of which are videotaped. This work was the subject of his TEDx Buffalo talk, which we have up on our website as well, which has been viewed over 3.5 million times. It has been the subject of reports on the BBC, in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic Monthly, Scientific American Mind, Huffington Post, and Psychology Today. It is also featured in a docu-series on Netflix called Surviving Death, and a PBS World Channel documentary called Death is But a Dream. Dr. Kerr's work has also been published in a book, which is called Death is But a Dream by Penguin Random House, which was released in 2020 in multiple languages. You can learn more about Dr. Kerr and the work of his team at www.drchristopherkerr.com. And without further ado, please join me and everyone else in welcoming Dr. Christopher Kerr. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. I hope to meet some of you in person at the conference. This work began actually in probably 2000, and I came to hospice more or less by accident, and I had a doctor's view of death, which was really medical futility or organ failure. And I wasn't here very long and realized that there was this larger dementiality, that people, in fact, don't die in pieces, but in totality. And it was really my colleagues in nursing and social work, et cetera, who pointed out that people were having these inner experiences at end of life. So dying naturally changes our perspective and our perceptions. And there's this inward process that was just so clearly happening. So when I tried to teach it, it was hard because we live in an evidence-based time, and people said, well, there's no evidence for this. So that launched the studies. Of course, it got a little receptivity in the medical world, but it went around the world in terms for other people who are either experiencing this or witnessing this or caregiving. So with that, I'm just going to begin. So, if you had to sum it up, I think our objective really is to humanize the dying process, is to take a broader view. Medicine itself is death denying and does very little to try to capture the experience of dying. What we've done in our studies is to really take a very objective view and not necessarily project through what's happening after death. But I think there is a better story, and I think that comes through in the data and in the videos that are forthcoming. I'm just going to pull myself out here. So what you're going to see, I instead of just presenting cold data, I would like to show you a series of videos. And we actually started doing this early because we didn't think the physician community would believe us. So we just started with handheld cameras. Of course, that ended up in PBS and Netflix. Where possible, I've tried to include the family as well as the patient in the video to show you, because we've done a lot of work on how this affects bereavement. And essentially what we find is, again, it's a closing of a life. People die in the context of their relationships and who they love. So obviously this has implications for those left behind. So you're going to see patients as well as their families, and I'm going to pull myself out of here. So this is Jeannie, and her daughter will be speaking as well.
I think more and more people are getting a little bit more hip to dreams than they were before.
When I think of my mother, I just think of a really vivacious, energetic. She was the type of person that when she walked into a room, it lit up. So when I walked in one morning, she said, I had the most amazing dream. And I said, tell me about it. And she said it was so detailed and so real that she felt that it was actually happening. And
I was laying in bed and people were walking very slowly by me. The right-hand side, I didn't know, but they were all very friendly and they touched my arm or my hand when they went by. But the other side were people that I knew. My mom and dad were there, my uncle. Everybody I knew that was dead was there. And they passed and did the same thing.
she described this as more of an event that she would believe almost happened. She knew that she didn't believe it happened because she woke up and she was at home, but she said it was as if she were in a different place.
Boy, I remember seeing every piece of their face. And I mean, I know that was my mom and dad and uncle and my brother-in-law.
That dream and her successive dreams and experiences made her feel comforted.
I felt good. I felt good to see some people. And the other ones didn't bother me either. I have seen my mother recently more. I can't say that my mother and I got along all those years, but we made up for it at the end.
And she said to me, I'm not crazy, Jewel. And I said, I don't think you are, Mom. It's okay.
When I told my family that I was happy about it, and that's what they asked. How does it make you feel? Well, I feel good about it.
I feel the comfort and the peace that some of these experiences brought to her gave her exactly what she needed to pass on. For me, it affirmed that you're not alone when you die.
So a couple of things that are pretty characteristics. These pre-death experiences are remarkably detailed. They're recalled. They feel near virtual. There's actually very little said between the dreamer and those in the dreams. Instead, everything's to be understood, intuited, or felt. And again, these end-of-life experiences don't deny the reality of death, but almost kind of transcend it. And most importantly, they validate having lived. The closer people are to dying, the more likely they are to see people who they've loved and often who they've lost. So it's about this connectivity between and across lives. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this fact, but clearly these aren't confusional states. These people aren't delirious. These are IRB approved studies by the university, so there has to be consent signed, and we screen for delirium or confusion on every time these are witnessed, et cetera, et cetera. So these aren't to be confused with those states. It's also important to clarify the vantage point. So we're not talking about the minutes before death or even the hours necessarily, but the days, weeks, and sometimes we've gone as far as months before death. So this next patient is Florence, and this is 5 days before her passing. In our studies, nearly 90% of people reported at least one end-of-life experience, 85% which were comforting. The discomforting ones were actually sometimes the most transformative. So they actually had implications, the person asking for forgiveness, etc. As people got closer to death, the frequency of these events increased, as did the comfort level. So we measured comfort relative to content. And as they saw people who they loved, and that could be pets, as you'll see with children, the comfort level increased. So there's this kind of self-soothing mechanism. What's really interesting, as you're going to see in Florence's case, is these end-of-life experiences, unlike, I think, near-death experiences, don't include great insights, epiphanies, pronouncements, that sort of thing. Instead, they're about having lived. It's about those common occurrences in life that make them feel whole or put back together. In Florence's case, she's around the kitchen table with her deceased husband and daughter. They typically aren't left with questions, so I've never had a patient wake up and say, what does this mean? Or I wonder about this metaphor. There just seems to be this understanding, something's intuitive. So here's Florence 5 days before passing.
Tell us about the dreams.
It's very hard to pinpoint because they were so real. In all these years, my husband's been dead and my daughter.
And when did your daughter pass?
7 years ago.
Okay, at the age of 37?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your husband died?
61.
61, okay.
I have seen them, not their face, not their clothes, but I knew it was them. But there was nothing really remarkable to define that was Dick or John. But the other night, I fell right into a sleep. We were like sitting at the kitchen table, laughing. I could see their faces. I could tell it was their clothes. We were laughing, we were talking, we were eating. It was like a regular Sunday dinner night.
That's wonderful.
It is. And then Monday night, the same thing happened. But the same identical thing. We're laughing, we're talking, we're having a ball.
How did it make you feel?
I woke up Monday morning and I went, was that real? And I said, that was real. That was really real.
It happened.
We were sitting there as much as we were sitting here.
Okay. Have you ever had a dream that was that vivid?
No.
No. That was the most vivid dream. And we hear this a lot, and it's very hard to tell whether it's real or it's a dream. Yeah.
It made me feel like that whole 12 years had never existed.
12 years, that's interesting. 12 years since he's been gone. Okay. Because it was so real that he was there in the present.
And 7 years since my daughter was gone. Mm-hmm. It was like we were always together, never separated.
Yeah. How does it make you feel about the prospect of dying? How does it change your
Oh,
view?
I'm not afraid of dying.
Does it make you think you're going to see them? Okay.
If I quit swearing.
If you what?
Quit swearing.
You're worried you're going to end up in the wrong place. I have a feeling you're okay. It's interesting that you can be in a dying process and at the same time feeling very much alive, right? And that made you feel alive.
Okay.
So both Jeannie and Florence show dying as this kind of paradox. They're physically dying, but they're obviously emotionally, spiritually alive and actually very vibrant. And very near death, both experience a sense of belonging or connectedness or put back together. So one of the studies we did is we looked specifically at this question, whether dying actually included positive psychological change. And we published this study using these tools for something called post-traumatic growth. So this idea that within a negative experience, there's actually positivity. And in fact, patients who were having these anabolic experiences scored higher in every measure of post-traumatic growth when compared to patients who are not dreaming. So in other words, people don't stop living because they're dying. In fact, the evidence suggests that people adapt and even gain insight right to the very end.
Tell us about.
Unfortunately, formal studies often exclude people who are cognitively different, largely because of issues of consent. And unfortunately, medically, we tend to discuss and define such patients in terms of their deficits, which unintentionally fails to acknowledge their full personhood. Yet we've had many patients diagnosed with dementia or Down syndrome who not only have emotional lives and history, but they also resurface at life's end. I think at the conference, I'll talk about some of our younger patients who fall into this category. This following video is of a woman named Sue, and she's actually talking about her mom, about the dying days of her mother, Irene, who was 97. She suffered from very advanced dementia. She lived in a nursing home in Buffalo, and she's going to refer to her father's name or Irene's husband named Gary.
So there was a lot of talk about, I had a dream last night and Gary was there, or Gary came to visit me, or we had dinner together. And she got to the point where she didn't even talk about it in terms of dreams. She talked about, I had dinner with your dad and Gary last night. That was not every day, but probably 2 or 3 times a week within the last year or 6 months.
So pretty frequent.
Pretty frequent. And she was very animated about it, very happy. And she didn't even talk about them as dreams. To her, they were something that happened last night. So they made me feel wonderful, because as I was getting off the elevator and thinking, I'm wondering what we're going to talk about today, because sometimes she didn't remember what they did during the day while I was at work, or maybe who else was there, but she always remembered her dream or vision or whatever she had. When I saw her that day, I was like, Mom, why did you go outside? You never go outside. You know, somebody's supposed to go with you. And she looked at me like, well, I was going to meet your father. And I said, well, where were you going? How were you going to get there? And she just kind of looked around. Well, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that she was going to meet him. So then I didn't know what to say at that point. And I said, well, where were you going? And she said, well, we were going to Niagara Falls to get married. Life was different for her those last couple months, because she had like something to talk about, something to look forward to. And those dreams were pepping her up, were making her happy, were making her almost look forward to go to sleep, which I think is great. Seeing that and being a part of it is a gift. And it was a gift for me. And I think it's a gift that should be shared. At the end of our life, there's a lot of spiritual, emotional work that is being done and changes that are happening that, I don't know, are we too afraid to recognize it, or you think there's not enough time or whatever, but I think it's as important, if not more important, than the physical things that we have to check off on the chart.
So again, it's this idea that having cognitive limitations don't deny or diminish these inner experiences. So it's just the same theme again and again. So days before her death, Irene's not experiencing escalating psychogenic distress, which some people would assume, but she's actually trying to get out of the nursing home because she's going to Niagara Falls where she was married. So instead of feeling impending death, she's actually reliving the best, most meaningful day of her life, which was her wedding. And I'll have younger patients to describe it very quickly. We had another young lady who had significant cognitive limitations, but was extraordinarily maternal and carried around dolls all the time and played with her babies and tucked them in and kissed them, etc. And she had abdominal tumor mass and swelling, and the swelling was actually her having a baby inside, and the pain was the baby moving. So again, the same idea, coming closer to death, but actually reaffirming life.
So there was a.
So most people can identify with this refrain from Dylan Thomas, this notion against fighting death, the dying of the light sort of thing. And it's beautiful, it's poetic, but it doesn't seem to actually be true. When he put pen to paper, he was imagining dying, not actually experiencing it. And really there seems to be this paradigm shift as people actually move towards their end of their life. The patients in our study and in these videos aren't fighting against anything, but more towards something. Most commonly, their struggle is to reconnect with something. This next video is of a gentleman named Horus, and just a couple things to pay attention to. So Horus is referencing dreams of his deceased wife, and he often becomes so overwhelmed with emotion that he actually struggles to find language or words. He's just overcome. And again, what's important to note is that he doesn't show any signs of fear or fight or struggle. Instead, he's warmed. He's warmed with feelings of relief and of love.
There's this just mass green, like a pasture of green, green grass. But again, hard to describe because it was a color green that I've never seen before. It was so vivid and so, it was like lifelike. And it felt good. My wife all of a sudden appeared, and I'm thinking, oh, this is even better yet. She had a certain smile about her that it was more like a joke. It was like I got you. And I'm wondering, what is the joke? What do you know? Why can't you talk to me? She just, there's just no conversation.
Yeah.
Well, she was always beautiful to me. But she was even prettier. She was She knew me inside out. Yeah. Or maybe that, I guess maybe words weren't necessary. We just looked at each other and knew exactly what one was thinking. It was just a good time. I don't know, but everything had left you, there was no problems. No, everything was happiness. It was like you wish the world was really felt good.
Yeah.
Felt like there was when you finish paying a bill that had been bugging you for years.
Relief.
It was that relief that it was gone. And it was, it was just a relief. Everything was okay. There's this.
Children are not included in our formal studies, but we have published a case series, and I actually oversee our pediatric palliative care program, which cares for about 130 children a day. Understandably, the experience for children is unique. As the Dickinson poem refers to this notion of faith anew, without reference points really for death. There often isn't the language for mortality, and in fact, they may not know someone who has passed. However, they often know animals that have, and these deceased animals are often featured prominently in several of the children we've cared for. In fact, I'm involved with a project with several people globally that includes the indigenous people of the Amazon and the outback in Australia, and some of the artists there have rendered children in the afterlife, and they're often accompanied by pets. And I'll show some of those paintings, I think, at the conference. They're fascinating. But the children don't seem to distinguish between these worlds. The message is the same, that the presence of something else, in their own words, means that they're loved and that they're not alone. In several of these cases, it was clear that, as you're going to see, these end-of-life experiences actually informed the child about their inevitable death, but they were overwhelmingly comforted. The following video is a patient I cared for. Her name Jessica, and she was 13, and she was nearing death at the time of this video. So she was raised by a single mom, and her fear was who was she, how was she without her mom? And what happens is she starts seeing her mother's deceased friend Mary, and then she also sees the return of her dog Shadow. So this is Jessica.
Mary is my mom's one of her best friends that she passed away from leukemia, and
How long ago?
2005.
Okay.
And I think I was pretty close to her. And she was very close to my mom. She was nice. And what happened was I seen her in my mom's room, and I was just coming up the stairs and going into my room, but I stopped because I seen something at the corner of my eye, and she was playing with my mom's curtains, and she had her favorite shirt on. My mom told me, because I told my mom it was gray and blue checkered shirt, like a flannel shirt that she had on. And she was playing with her curtains, and my mom's phone was charging, and she was looking down at my mom's phone, and I told my mom that, and my mom was pretty shocked, and I said, see, she's probably happy that you did a good thing, and she's coming to say hi. And I had a feeling that she was just coming to tell me that you're going to be okay, everything's fine, but she didn't look at me. She was just looking, but I had a feeling if I called out her name, she would look at me, but I didn't want to scare my mom.
How did it make you feel? What did you get from her? What did you feel from seeing her?
I felt a sign of relief
Yeah.
and happiness because she was a very strong person, and I know that I'm strong, and my mom tells me all the time that I'm like her.
And you told me that you thought that, oh Mom, I saw an angel. That's how you
And
said
I
you
thought
felt,
I
and you
saw
said,
an
felt peace,
angel.
and then
I
you were
felt
able to go to
peace.
sleep.
And then I was able to go to sleep.
So it was really comforting.
That was comforting, yes.
You weren't afraid.
I wasn't afraid of it at all. My dreams that I have are good dreams now, which I dream about my old dog Shadow that has passed away, and I see him and he's in a good place and he's running, he's having fun, but then again he runs away and I never see him again. I feel like it's his meaning of saying goodbye. I have an occasionally where he comes to see me, I have a feeling to have him say it's okay, that I'm in a safe place. And
He comes with a meaning for you, and that meaning
we
is.
were close.
And
Even though I didn't like him half the time because he would always be on my butt, but I still loved him. Yes, I do have to sort out what's real and what's imagined. I usually just try to lay there in my bed and try to reenact that dream and just think about what just had happened to wake me up.
Yes.
But I do get afraid because I see how dark my room is, and I look on the ground, and the one night I happened to see a long black thing, and that was him by my bed. Yeah, and then I went down to the ground and went like that, and it looked like his head went up, and then he was gone.
Okay, so you do things when you wake up to check to see.
They're really there.
Yeah.
I feel that meaning is meaning of love. And that they're there and they're always going to protect you.
It's funny because he doesn't say anything to you.
No, dogs don't talk.
No, but dogs give messages.
Yeah, they give you a message of heal and love that you're okay.
Okay, so that's Shadow.
That's Shadow.
I think I'm going to just let Jeannie, in the interest of time, because I want to leave some time for questions. So I'm just going to let Jeannie tell her story.
When I was sleeping, deep sleep, my Aunt Miriam came down to bring me up to heaven, and she was playing with me with Barbies.
Okay. So when you saw her, she looked good?
Yeah.
Was she smiling?
Yeah.
Okay.
She had to wear.
She what?
She had to wear oxygen.
Okay.
Because she was very old.
Did she wear the oxygen in the dream?
No.
She looked better then?
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to play Barbies with her?
Yeah.
Do you dream of any animals?
Yeah.
What type of animals do you dream of?
My cousin's dog that passed away.
What was the dog's name?
Moose. I see Daisy. That was my grandma's dog.
Daisy?
She passed away.
Okay. And so you get to play with that dog in your dreams?
Yeah.
What does all of this mean to you? You get to see all these animals. That's kind of neat, huh?
Yeah.
So these dreams, is it fun to go to sleep to think about what you're going to see?
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't scare you then?
No.
Okay. And when you see your aunt, where are you?
In a castle.
Really? Is it beautiful?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's huge.
Describe it for me. Are there other people there?
No.
Okay. Is it warm?
Yes.
Is it sunny?
There's a window that you can see the sun through it.
Uh-huh.
And it has God on the window.
Like a church would?
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds beautiful. So this is a pretty special place.
And then there's a piano.
Mm-hmm.
And then a pretty painting of a baby, the little baby. The church.
Yeah, like in a church. In a manger kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the castle is? What does it mean?
Safe place.
Safe place. Yeah. Safe place, and it's sunny and it's warm. And your aunt's there.
And then they have a pool.
Really?
A built-in pool.
Whew! You like to swim?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You nailed it. And you got the world's best smile. Is there anything else we should know about you?
That I'm beautiful.
You are beautiful.
Right before she went to sleep yesterday, I heard her voice in the bedroom over my baby monitor, and I thought maybe she was calling me, so I asked her, what did you say? And she said nothing, and then I heard her voice again, and I thought, what the heck, who was she talking to? So I went in there, and she said she was talking to God, and that he was a very old man, but a very good-looking, cute man, and that he was going to make her all better, and that she was going to go live up in the castle with my Aunt Miriam, who she had been talking to as well, and that there's a big, huge bed there, and I let her know that we were all going to be there together someday, that Mom was going to come there too someday when it's my time. And she said, and God will make you all better when you get there.
What does it all mean for you?
Well, it kind of helps. I mean, sometimes I think it's real. For real? Are you really talking to God? I don't know. After the conversation with God and after my talk with her, she's been just calm. She off and on would talk about the castle and how beautiful it was there. It was warm. There was a swimming pool there. And I still think about that all the time, because now when it rains out, I kidly tell her, would you stop jumping in your pool, Jeannie? We would like some sun, thank you. It was a beautiful thing to hear, because it just helped. Yeah. It didn't seem like it because now I'm crying, but it does help. Jeannie's dreams and visions have helped my grieving process. Most of the time. Sometimes I'm human and I'm doubtful, but I hear her in the back of my head all the time saying, no, Mom, there's a castle. I'm waiting for you up here. Yeah, it's helpful, because I really, truly want to believe that there's a heaven, that there's something, that I'll see her again. Yeah. And because of how strongly she believed in it, I can't not believe in it. Sure. If we talk about regular medical doctors, I would like them to listen to the patients when they're talking about dying and death and dreams and visions, and they need to believe them.
So just to clarify, so we obviously don't go around seeing patients with cameras. So we had already seen Jeannie, obviously, and then went back and asked the questions. And the film's edited. She actually went through and named about 13 animals that were in the castle. So these were, somebody's bird, her grandma's dog. They were all there, and they're all, and we've heard this again and again. They see them, and they see them vibrant and healthy and playful. And again, this idea that they're not alone and that their love is repeated again and again. And this notion that of creating their own comfort and space, So, you know, that she created a castle. So she's literally surrounded, and she named it her safe place. And she described all sorts of sensations. Some of it she touched on the warmth, obviously, and the light and all those sort of things. So this kind of other world descriptions are thematic throughout. And again, we've got similar stories like that. I think so. We leave time for questions. I'm actually going to skip the next video and go to the end one, but just very quickly, you know, we've focused a lot on the bereaved and people left behind. We published 2 papers which involved 750 bereaved family members. I won't go into detail except to say what's good for the patient is good for the loved one. Families often witness this, and this, how we see someone leave us, absolutely impacts how we recall, remember, and kind of transition through the grieving process. Just, you know, very quickly, if you've got husband and wife, they've partnered together for decades, and they share in the loss of a child, and you know, the husband's looking down at his wife, and she's holding the child that they lost. That redefines death from something that's empty to something that's actually rich, and again, very much life affirming. The other thing that comes out, you know, is this, again, this connectivity across lives, and we see that not only this kind of ties that bind us, whether we're here or living in the same space or not, just kind of come out and at the end and give enormous meaning. This next video kind of tells that story. This young lady's name was Sierra, and I believe she was in her 20s, 24, and she had come from a cancer hospital where, unfortunately, she was diagnosed tragically late, and everybody around, she had a young child, everybody had around was having trouble accepting what stage she was at, and I'll let them just tell the story.
Sierra was a 28-year-old African-American woman. She was diagnosed with colon cancer after what seemed like far too long between the presentation of her symptoms and the actual diagnosis. So she went for many months undiagnosed. By the time she was diagnosed, her cancer was already too far advanced to really make an impact or extend her life.
Sierra was very determined to do absolutely everything she could to fight her disease for her son, for her fiance, and for her family.
She was clearly not in the mindset of a dying person. She had little to no insight, at least insight that she would admit to, of the fact that she was nearing the end of life or even heading towards the end of her life.
Her family was not at all ready to see her go. They loved her, and they wanted her to fight this as well.
After we had a meeting, a very touching meeting, where the son finally put words to what was the experience in the room, and that is the question, is my sister going to die? At that point, we decided that we better move the meeting into Sierra's room.
We all gathered together with Sierra, her mom, her stepdad, her siblings, and her care team here at the hospice inpatient unit. Dr. Farrell was with her, speaking to her, trying to explain to her what we were no longer able to do for her medically.
During that time, what happened was something most profound, and that was that Sierra actually engaged her predeceased grandfather right in the room.
It happens every single time I talk about it. I get goosebumps. I get this sense of amazement and emotion to be there with someone when they experienced a vision like that. She saw her grandfather.
Afterwards, Sierra's mother said, "What did he say?" And he said, "I'm very proud of you. You are a wonderful granddaughter. You are a wonderful daughter. You are a wonderful mother." As the conversation was going on, Tammy asked Sierra, "What is he saying to you now?" He's saying, "I'm going to see you soon, and everything is going to be okay." At that point, Tammy said, "Listen to your grandfather." And it was at that point, really, that the family knew that Sierra's time was limited.
It was probably less than a week after that vision that she was able to let go and she passed. If we discount end-of-life dreams and visions, we're doing a disservice to our patients, to their families, and how they are able to not only experience the loss of a loved one, but how they then are able to grieve later.
I think she gained the comfort that she needed, not to give up, but to be at peace and let whatever was going to happen. I think her grandfather being there, of course, made it a lot more comforting for her. I think had Sierra not had those visions, I think she would have been more frightened. I think she may not have had that, I don't want to say easiness, but that I think she would have been more compelled to vocalize how frightened she was. But knowing that he was there for her, it made it very much easier for me, because I knew she would have him to be with and he would take care of her. It does help me process the loss, because I believe they visit us, both of them, you know. I think, you know, things happen for a reason. And yes, she's not in pain anymore, and she's back to her healthy, playful, joyful self, you know. And he's there to watch over her as he did here. When it comes to dealing with patients who have these experiences, is not to dismiss their feelings and what they are relaying to you, what they've seen, who they're speaking with, because it's real. It's not, in my opinion, it's real. To them, it's real.
So, you know, again, these experiences, they tend not to be deeply philosophic or religious, at least in terms of symbolism, but they focus on what matters most, which is our relationships. Chaplain Carrie Egan wrote a beautiful piece, which was, you know, what patients talk about at the end of life or when dying. And she says, you know, the first and usually last classroom of love is the family. And again, this idea of putting us all back together. And somehow, you know, they tend to heal the wounds of the spirit or the fears. In the adults, we obviously see the need for forgiveness or to let go of a concern. And in children, it's this idea that they're not by themselves and that they're okay. I think with that, yeah, I'm going to stop. Let me just put myself back on so we have time for some questions. I hope, apologize if that was rushed. I just wanted to get it out
That was
there.
perfect. That was excellent. And I think that it did create several questions in the sidebar that would be wonderful maybe to start out with, if that's okay.
Sure.
Michelle Johnson is asking a question. She had a shared death experience with her daughter, as I did with Morgan. And she is saying, does Dr. Kerr also document shared death experiences in his hospice patients and other persons? Let's see, SDEs share such similar characteristics as these beautiful experiences. Have you been able to do that? Meaning the family members actually seeing and experiencing the same kind of.
No, we haven't documented that. I mean, you certainly hear cases of it. And I know there's some people who have studied this. You know, I think if I were to be, I've never got that question, and I'm actually throwing a little bit by it because I don't hear a lot of that. And I've been doing this for a very long time, and I actually think it may be me, just not being receptive or asking, you know. So the answer is no, we didn't study. Our approach to this was very deliberate. We, you know, projecting into some of those spaces, it's a bit of a blank canvas, so you can put on it your religious interpretation, afterlife, paranormal, whatever, and we deliberately didn't do that. And the reason why is that we really just wanted to translate the words of the patient. And so I think we put blinders on, and in the name of objectivity. So does that make sense?
Yes, you were focusing on one thing that was very, very important, and not necessarily looking from right to left to see what else was out there. But yeah. That's a valid reason. And again, it's also a good question, Michelle. I like that question. Could I ask you something about the children that you interviewed? Sabina is saying, how about children like mine who don't have any loved ones or didn't, that they knew during their lifetimes on the other side? In these dreams, are they scared seeing strangers, even if those strangers are very loving? Did you have any instances where there were children?
We had lots of instances where there wasn't a person. So I should have explained. Jessica didn't know her mother's friend who had passed. And I apologize. That's important to point out. She never knew her, and there's a more extended video that maybe I'll show at the conference. She actually didn't want to tell her mother about this because she and we hear a lot of this. People are concerned about the interpretation, or she didn't want to frighten her mother, because I think she was informing herself of what was happening and was protecting the parent. She never knew her. And so when then her mother was showing her pictures, she pointed out features of recall. But yeah, no, she didn't know. In terms of not knowing people, that's, I think, where the animals come in. And so they'll often know an animal or a figure from a story. So the embodiment of someone who's loved them or can love them or comfort them or secure them seems to come through.
That's wonderful. We have a question here. Delar is asking, where can I see Dr. Kerr's documentary, Death is But a Dream? I have tried to look for it without success. Is it available to be viewed on Netflix, Amazon, or anything right now?
No, that's, do you know what? Let me try to find you more. What happened was they sold some of the distribution rights to PBS, and it's gone to other parts of the world, but they kept the rights here, so it can't be, you have to actually purchase it. But why don't I see if I can find that? I'll email you the contact to the producers of it. But that's really unfortunate.
But it is possible to pay to view it. Is there
Yes, but
a
let
way?
me see if I can find something where they could. Yeah, I'll find something for you.
Okay, because if it is possible to pay, I'm sure that there would be people who would be interested in that as well. But also, yeah, if there is a way to get it onto Netflix or Amazon or
Sure.
something like this. Let's see. And Michelle is asking another question, and I'm going to ask hers because it's right in front of me. Another question from me, sorry. Why do you call these experiences visions instead of visitations? Vision sounds kind of subjective and more easily dismissed by others. What would you say to that?
I think again, we didn't want to put a visitation declares that what it kind of is, and we were using the patient's own words rather than our words for it. So I haven't heard them described as, I tell you, it's actually, the whole thing's wrong, the nomenclature, because we shouldn't be calling them dreams, because when we asked our patients, one of the things we hear most commonly, you don't understand, I don't normally dream, or I don't recall my dreams, or this wasn't a dream. So we coined the term end of life experiences to really capture something other than what they said it's not, which was dreams. And in fact, we did a study where we asked them to grade out the realism from 0 to 10. So 10 being the most realistic and vivid, and the number that was hit the most commonly was 10.
Wow.
So calling it dreams is wrong. Yeah, I guess you could call it visitations, but that's not the language people were using.
That's not what they used. Yeah, which makes sense. Also, Irene is saying, what about sudden death? Is there a likelihood of end of life experience in those cases? Do you know anything?
Unfortunately, there's no way to know. I'm sure some of you have seen the recent study that went across the wire internationally, probably 2-3 weeks ago. They were doing a study of somebody who had seizure disorder, and he died during the study. So they caught his brain waves, which is pretty unusual. It was everywhere in the news. And basically the brain waves that emerge are the ones you see when somebody's actively rekindling memory or recall. So that, again, this paradox, right? He's a deoxygenating and dying brain organically, biologically, yet you see the spike in activity. And I also reviewed a paper that was very similar that showed at the end this opposite direction. If you think about the expressions, my life flashed before my eyes, or that horrible young man who was who's the police officer was kneeling on his neck, and his last words, he's calling for his mother. So I don't know a way to study or ask the question, but there's certainly some data points that suggest that something happens. Yeah.
Wonderful. Peter is asking, and this might be one of our last questions, do the patients ever see transitioned loved ones while they're awake?
Well, that's a great question. So I should have said that. So I always have a hard time. So I could present cold data or let the patients tell the story themselves. So it's a really important point. We asked people in the survey, so did these occur while sleeping, awake, or both? And it was 50-50.
Oh.
And so here's what, and again, it's like the dream nomenclature. They're saying it's not dreams, and they're also saying these are often happening when they're awake. Now, to the question of visions, if somebody's implying visions, that means that we're coming into the patient's room and we're seeing them seeing something. That's not what's happening, but subjectively, they're telling us they're not asleep. And there's a couple of ways to interpret this. Part of dying is, dying by definition tends to include sleeping more and deeper. The clock kind of goes, and sleep architecture goes. And is this vivid dreaming? What is it that actually we're experiencing? And we don't know. The best I can do is, again, tell you what our patients said on paper in survey, which was that they weren't always asleep.
Very interesting. So about 50-50, which is
It was exactly 50-50.
that is just fascinating.
Mhm.
Right now it's time, and I don't want to keep you too long, and I just feel so grateful for you joining us. But we are going to have you at the conference, so we're going to be able to listen to you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
If you could find out a link for
I'll
for
send you, find somewhere to send you.
that would be fabulous. And I just truly appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And what we always do when we say goodbye is ask everyone to unmute and say thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Kerr.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Kerr.
you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Kerr. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good
night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And
Thank you.
thank you again. We will have this on YouTube, so you'll be able to rewatch it. And have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you so much. It was really
Great
wonderful.
to see you.